Hello, everybody. I am Callie Hanna from FandomWire, and I am here today with Marcus Taormina. Is that how
Yeah.
you pronounce it? Okay, good. First try. I am here with Marcus Taormina, the VFX a very storied VFX supervisor, I guess, at this point. Your most recent work was just on Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Uh, and we're here to, talk to him about his work and the film and all of that good stuff. All right, let's get the ball rolling. So, as a VFX supervisor, for people who may not know, your role is essentially as like the sort of major liaison between the VFX department and the animators and the people making it and the director of the film and the studio and whatever designers and concept artists and so on and so forth. So talk to us a little bit about like how that collaboration process like works and how you go about it.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, you nailed it. That's great. That doesn't happen often, so thank you for
I did
that.
some research.
Yeah, no. It's a very collaborative process, and it takes an army, it takes a village, whatever, but it really does. I think when I start out, I'll look at the script and I'll go through line by line and I'll talk to, for this instance, I'll talk to Zach and say, okay, like here's all the things I think are visual effects. Let's talk through it and how we want to achieve these. What's the intention, how we want to shoot them, and then we'll come up with a plan and we'll go shoot it. And then so that's part of the process. Obviously, on when we're filming on set, I have a whole team capturing all sorts of data to make sure that the effects look photoreal, lighting, environment scans, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we get into post, it's kind of a whole other beast. An edit comes together. Maybe the intention of the shots when they're edited together changes, right? So we shot it one way, but maybe the edit suggests a different thing. So then I got to figure out those puzzle pieces. And then that's when I start to, I mean, all along the process, I'm engaging with art department, with, costumes, with concept art, talking to the vendors about the work. And then when we get into post, it's really when we start to do the work, right? So we take what we shot, call them the plates, the production footage of each shot. We break it down into each individual shot, and then each individual shot gets a name, and we work on that shot for whatever the creative intention is for Zach. I liaison with him. He's very busy, so he's like, "Here's my idea. I gotta go. I gotta go to sound or editorial." I go, "Great. I'll take that idea and I'll sit down with multiple visual effects facilities around the world. So, I'll talk to New Zealand, Weta, New Zealand, in the afternoon, and then in the morning, I'll talk to Montreal, Framestore Montreal. And so all of those facilities have a certain shot count or sequence that they're responsible for, and that choice is made by both me and with Zach, about like, okay, this facility does really great creatures. We're going to go with them. We're going to do the creatures there. And so it's a process back and forth, each shot back and forth. I'll give creative notes of mine based on what Zach says, but also how I want the shot to look. And then finally, in the end, call it 20 versions later, Zach's like, yep, this is good. This looks great. I'm happy with this. And then we call it a final and we're done with it. And then that process happens for movie 2 over 1,316 shots.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. I wasn't it's very interesting to get this sort of insight in terms of how you're going over the script and saying, okay, this needs to be effects, this needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah, so I guess going into, because one of the things you talked about during that was how you would, go to different studios of, okay, so this person like, or this studio like does really good creatures, so we want to go to them for this scene, or this studio is good at this thing, so we want to get to them for this particular scene. And I guess sort of that would bring me to, because you worked on this was two movies kind of more or less back to back, I believe.
That's correct.
And I guess I wanted to discuss how you sort of we can segue seamlessly into how you approach part one and part two, because and how the two compared, because in part one there's a lot more like different locations and different creatures, whereas in part two it's a lot more like nonstop action, people shooting at each other, sword fights, that sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
the
I think, again, going through is a 180, 190 page script. I look at it and I go, okay. And by the way, it's not just me sitting with a script. It's a lot of whiteboards. It's a lot of notes, figuring out what makes sense. Um, Looking at the both movies together was the first thing I did, and making sure that we're allotting, for the creatures, we're allotting the right facilities. But if I'm going to give, a lot of the first movie was loaded, with Framestore, Montreal, and Vancouver. And so
right,
I knew, because we were working on both movies concurrently, that I didn't want to necessarily overload them. So then they're working on movie one, they got to do movie one because it's getting released. They got to da da da
right,
da.
yeah,
If I had movie two shots of them, those movie two shots wouldn't be touched for a long time until they were finishing movie one. That's not to say that they wouldn't do that. It'd be a scheduling thing. But I wanted to make sure that we allotted the right resources and the right shots for each facility to give both them a chance to do their best work, and also for us to make sure that we're spreading it evenly across both of them, and make sure that when we laid out movie one, that it made sense for movie two, both in terms of the deliverables, but kind of the divide of work. And
hmm,
so I will say, like, now having done both of them, it worked out quite well with that plan. And even though maybe some facilities really wanted more work, really wanted more environments, I wish we could have done that creature. Like, it ultimately becomes kind of my decision and Zach's decision. But ultimately, like, I'll say, you know what, I love that, but we can't do it there. We have to spread out the work, and it's just being responsible with it and making sure that we get the right amount of looks on the shots, right? Of those 20 versions of a shot, we can at least see it three
right.
times, and we can get comfortable with it, and we can adjust the edit, and then we can finish both movies.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of, you want to make sure, everybody's got a even amount of workload and you're getting what you need on, specific times and all of
Yep.
that. I guess so one of the things that surprised me in your earlier question was how much, was you going through the script and, with the whiteboards, because I know, especially for someone like Zack Snyder, he is someone who has a very specific idea of what he wants to do. It's a big thing with him. And forgive me if this sounds like a dumb question, but I wrote in my notes here, how many slow-mo shots question mark? And I I just want to know, like, was that like a part of the because he's big on, it's a big thing he likes to do, and obviously, even though I know you can just film some stuff in
Yeah.
slow-mo, there's a lot of, especially with like the swords and everything, there's VFX shots you have to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So was there a list? Like, did he give
You
you
want
a
you want the
list?
honest opinion? I have that stat right here. Do you want to
Oh
know how
my
many?
god.
264 slow motion shots in movie two.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably spans probably four reels, I'd say. Um, those are that's like all of them, because we accounted for any of the respeeds. I believe that's all of them. So
Wow.
yeah. But as far as like the slow mo, like, it's obviously Zach's style. The biggest thing for those is keeping them alive, right? Because with the final battle, like, what was there, and it's funny because I did this thing where I turned on, I was like, oh, let me look at the plate layers, what we shot right when we were about to deliver the movie, and I'm like, holy cow, there's so much more tangible stress from the visuals than what we actually shot. What we shot was just them running across a smoke covered bridge.
Right, yeah.
When you add all the tracers and all the elements of slag and all the dust hits and all the the entry wounds and stuff like that, it adds another layer and it keeps the shot alive.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. I am both surprised and not surprised at all that there was a very specific stat on that.
Yes.
Very fun. Very fun. And I guess on that note, one of the other interesting things I want to talk about with this film specifically is, so the swords, like the oracle blades, I think they're called. They don't say it in the movie. They're not lightsabers.
Yes,
Yeah, they have this specific smoking effect
they
on
do.
them, which
Yep.
I find very interesting, and I wanted to talk to you about the specific challenges of trying to animate with that, and also if there was any specific design, ideas of between like you or Zach or and stuff, how that idea, came about.
Yeah, so the idea actually came about for movie one. I mean, okay, again, I did it all at the same time. So, but when I
Right,
was
right,
thinking
yeah.
about like Nemesis, because I was like what played first in the script, and when we started to explore it, I had this like this one image of light painting. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's basically like a long exposure at night. You can do it with a flashlight, and you basically just paint, and
Right.
the shutters open, and then once it closes, it captures all that smearing. And so I loved that image, and then I had some sparks, and I had some lasers that were shot at high speed, just in like a library of mine, a weird library that I have. But I was like, all of these elements are really cool to think about what the swords could do. And so when we started doing the test, it was really about okay, a long exposure or a synthetic shutter of the streaking of the light streaking across frame, and then it was the sword popcorn is what we called it, so the little bits
Oh.
that pop off of it, and then it's the heat signature, so the rippling and heat signature, heat distortion across the frame. And then what you mentioned, which is last and most important, is like the smoke effects. So like the trailing smoke that came off of that. And so with all of that, like it was also the color palette, but it presented challenges when we it either streaked too much because of the synthetic shutter and didn't have enough streaking of smoke or vice versa. So it was just about kind of dialing those elements in a shot to shot basis. But I thought it was really successful in the way that it kind of it ended up looking, and also it made it feel like a more threatening, like tangible weapon, I think too, because it kind of had the streak that in our minds we're going, oh, something just happened and it's still lingering. That was the other thing, like the lingering and uh, the diffusion of the smoke and how long we kept it on shot. So
Mm, all right. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Like the menace of the oh, there's still just something there, so
yeah,
makes that much more impactful. All right. Let's see. So you've, Rebel Moon is just, your latest project. You've worked on a bunch of different things. You did Guardians of the Galaxy, you've done Ninja Turtles, bunch of different, worked with a lot of different franchises and a lot of different studios and etc. And I just wanted to ask if if you could pin down, what would you say of all the stuff you have worked on so far, what would you say is the thing you're most proud of at this point?
I'm not just saying this because I'm doing an interview, but I'd say these two films, like, because they were just they were such behemoths to do, and it was just so much work. And like, when I look back on it, and with all the, it's been over 3 years that I've been on the projects, and it's like it's starting to come to an end a little bit. Like we're gonna be done in a month and a half, and it's like you look back on all the things that we've done and all the exploration that we had to do to make the visuals interesting and unique and different, and like all of those conversations and all of that energy that went into it, like it was really fun to create this too, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I really hope the audiences like have enjoyed it, because there were shots that we were just like, let's just make cool fun looking shots, like we don't have to necessarily tell every single story for a shot, but let's just make it fun and interesting for everybody. So yeah, I think it's this one, the Rebel Moon franchise.
I mean, yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, you do some good. You've done some good work. I will say that much.
Thank you.
And I guess in terms of that, is there anything like is there any sort of like project or like with a franchise or a studio or a director that you haven't worked with yet that you would like really love to do, like a dream project?
I think a Bond film would be really fun. I think like
Ooh.
a Bond film would be fun. I also love like period pieces, like any period pieces. Like I just
Hmm.
like um and then maybe a biopic. Like a
Oh,
biopic would be fun
interesting.
if it's the right one. It's again, it's like range of like I want to do it all, but it also is, does the project fit? Me and my style. Does the director like my style? Does it can I you know fit within his or her style? So it's a lot of factors, but yeah, that's kind of I'd like to do
Huh.
film. I think is the number one one.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a very good answer. I mean, depending on I've heard, depending on who you believe, the next Bond film might be a period piece. Some people have speculated
Yeah,
that.
that'd be
I
cool.
would, two for the price of one.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, looks like right. We got time for one more question. And you mentioned you're close to wrapping up on this whole project. You've said you got a month and a half left. I'm guessing that is wrapping up the director's cuts for the two. Can you give us any insight onto those? Hmm?
So Zach's kind of been out there talking about them. What I'll say is that we shot a lot more footage than is currently available on the platform for movie one and movie two. So there's a lot more expansive scenes, um, more character development, et cetera, et cetera. I think people are really going to enjoy it. And I think it'll fulfill some of the wishes they had for the PG-13 version of them.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you for that insight, and thank you so much for your time, Marcus Taormina, everyone.